For nearly 2 decades, you've turned to Illegal Curve Hockey as your destination for the latest news, audio, and analysis regarding the Winnipeg Jets, Manitoba Moose, and all things hockey in Manitoba. Join Drew Mandel, Dave Manouk, and Ezra Ginsburg as a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Good afternoon, Winnipeg. Good afternoon, Manitoba. For all those joining us live at Cityplace, as well as on all of our social media platforms, we say good afternoon, universe, and welcome to a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, the Illegal Curve Pregame Show, Jets and Blues, set to take place in a couple hours of time here in downtown Winnipeg. I'm your host, Drew Mandel, joined by Ezra Ginsburg and Dave Manouk. We're back at it. We just 4 hours ago, we ended the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, and now we roll seamlessly into the Illegal Curve Pregame Show. All about the Jets and the Blues, the last-minute matchups, the last-minute analysis set ahead of Game 1. It's a great crowd here live at Cityplace. Downtown Winnipeg is filled with people wearing their white, wearing their Jets gear, just living and dying in anticipation. There you go for Game 1 coming up in a couple hours' time. Gentlemen, great to see you again on this now Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, as you said, Drew, it's been about 25 minutes since we ended the Saturday morning show, but boys, less than 2 hours away from Game 1. It seems like it was never going to come, but as you said, the anticipation has been building. You know, driving from St. James to the arena here, you just see, lots of white jerseys and signs, and it's just awesome. And, we have obviously a opportunity here to break down the game and talk about the Jets and the Blues.
Yeah.
And as we did this morning, but we're going to break it down even more. Mikey McIntyre is going to join us.
Yeah.
And nothing's better. There's nothing better than a whiteout party in Winnipeg, that's for sure.
Especially with beautiful weather like we're having right now. It sort of adds to the atmosphere, adds to the party, Dave Manouk.
Drew, I think I speak for everybody in the chat and everybody here waiting for you to freeze live on air.
You want me to do jazz hands again? I can do it live in person if you want, if you didn't get enough of it.
Shout out to Ken Gardner coming all the way from North Dakota, driving out to see the whiteout. He's here.
I was just in North Dakota last week. I should have called Ken. We could have gone to Chick-fil-A or something.
The surprise is you were able to get across the border. I think is really that's the shocking news of the day. If you ask me.
But I mean, look, it's there's a lot of excitement. You can feel it. You can sense it. We talked about it on the show. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to see it. You're seeing everybody in their white jerseys, including Ezzy, and you see everybody who's just, like I said, we said it was palpable, but now you're actually seeing it. You're seeing, as Drew and I were walking down Graham and looking at all the fans who are already showing up, getting ready for the whiteout parties and all that stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. And this is going to be a heck of a good hockey game. And there's a lot of excitement. Scott Arneal just held his press availability. I don't know that there's anything substantial said. We were setting up, of course, here. But we haven't seen anything on the Twitterverse to suggest that there was anything particularly newsworthy out of it.
Unless Arneal was saying, oh, yeah, by the way, Gabe Velarde's in.
And Ehlers is all of a sudden a game-time decision. No, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
The entire presser is available on
YouTube. It's in the pregame
channel.
Report, so if you want. And I just saw 7JP7B saying, I'm wearing my IC shirt until half hour before the game, and then he'll wear his Mark Scheifele jersey. Ken is also wearing a IC, one of our the Nike long sleeves. But he's gonna put on a jersey after because it's in all black. So could have bought the white one, Ken. There are white ones.
Next time, that'll be his next purchase. Will have to be the white one. But you're absolutely right. The atmosphere, the buzz, the vibe is increasing. You can feel it here at Cityplace as well. All these great vendors, everybody decked out. Lots of this gentleman over here wearing his big Jets chain and the Jets jersey and the Jets hat. Love to see it as the Jets and the Blues are set to do battle.
Well, Drew, you also have to give our buddy here that's got the KFC bucket on his head. You have to give him a shout out.
Yeah, old chicken bucket head over there, is ready for the game as well. So you can feel the vibe. It's excitement. It's anticipation. Everybody's feeling great about themselves, of course, until the puck drop happens, and then the players on the ice will be the ones who determine how this matchup goes. And again, we talked about it this morning, and we went in depth on the playoff series and on the matchup. And the Blues are a quality hockey team. They are not going to be, they should not be taken for granted or taken lightly. Right. And I'm confident that the Winnipeg Jets certainly won't be guilty of overlooking their opponent. But when you look at it on paper, gentlemen, and you match it all up and you consider, the absences from the Jets lineup and the absences from the Blues lineup, I can't help but feel and continue to feel like the Winnipeg Jets are just that much better, like that 10, 15, 20% better than the St. Louis Blues are. And I think that will ultimately be the determining factor in this series between the Jets and the Blues. The Blues had to go on this incredible run just to get to this playoff spot. I truly do wonder how much they have left in the tank to try and elevate even higher to beat a Winnipeg Jets team that has been the cream of the crop in the NHL this season.
Absolutely. And we talked about it on this morning's show, right? A lot of people want to compare this year's St. Louis Blues team to the 2019 Blues team. Well, this isn't the same Blues team, and this is not the same Jets team, who, by the way, had a far better regular season record back in 2019, right? You forget the Jets were maybe not a heavy favorite, but they were the favorite in that series, obviously with home ice advantage and coming off of the long 2018 run, right? So I think this is going to be a close series. I'm with you, Drew. I mean, it's hard not to have the Jets as the favorite, considering that they were the first place team for so long, right? But I think we all know that this Blues team is going to present a challenge for the Jets. Yes, the Jets are coming off a very dominant win back on April 7th over the Blues. I said on today's show that I thought that was maybe the most dominant win of the season, just because you had a Blues team that was coming in on a 12-game winning streak. They were the talk of the entire league, and the Jets were able to pretty much dominate the Blues from start to finish. The score didn't indicate that, but we all know that that was a dominant performance by the Jets. So this Blues team is obviously very deep, even without Dylan Holloway in the lineup. They've got Colton Parayko back in the lineup, and I think there's no matchup that's maybe more fascinating, guys, than Connor Hellebuck versus Jordan Binnington, because not only is it a rematch of 2019, and we know that Binnington got the better of Hellebuck, it's a rematch of the recently held Four Nations tournament where Binnington got the best of Hellebuck. But I think everybody who's watched both teams this year, or anybody that's watched the Jets specifically, will give the Jets the advantage in net. And yes, Hellebuck didn't have a great playoffs last year, but the Jets as a team didn't play very well in those last 4 games against the Avalanche. So I still think you're giving the Jets the edge there. Maybe it's not as much as you would give with other teams in net, because Binnington obviously has proven that he's a big game goaltender. But I think when you go down and you get into the third and fourth lines, that's where I think the Jets have the edge over the Blues. And I mentioned this, and I'm going to say it again, top power play versus one of the worst PKs in the league. That, to me, is something I'm watching. I know Drew and I went back and forth and we said, that's not necessarily going to be the determining factor in this series, but I think it's a huge edge that the Jets have. The Blues penalty kill has struggled all year.
No question about the Blues penalty kill. It's just not the same Jets power play is what my point was when Ezzy and I were talking about it, and you were there, of course, Dave, on the Legal Curve Hockey Show this morning, is that I don't know that this Jets power play is as big of an asset as it has been all season long. That, to me, is the concerning level from the Winnipeg Jets perspective, Dave, that the Jets, don't have their regular power play unit, when they're going to do battle. It's not the power play unit that had Ehlers and Velarde and was just absolutely an almost guaranteed goal at times this year. So the Jets can certainly prove me wrong on that front, but I do think that you can't necessarily compare the original power play to the revamped unit, given the absences in the Jets lineup.
No, absolutely. That's why we always it's one thing to take the totality of what the season looked like. The Jets were the number 1 power play overall, but everybody who watches this team knows they have not been the same power play unit. Same first power play unit without Nikolai Ehlers, without Gabriel Velarde. So there's no question about it. But as his point still stands, it's not as if the PK for the St. Louis Blues is revamped and shown that they're going to be effective. Now we know with Winnipeg last year that even when they were because they were so bad out of the gate, they were never able to overcome. So even though it got better and improved, it was never able to really get anywhere of significance. It's still, where was it, like 23rd, 21st last year, whatever it was.
About that,
as my Baba Toots would say, what was. But the fact of the matter is that, you do think and you do wonder how impactful. I was going to actually ask Sean, I think we'll ask maybe Mike this question, but how much of you said, Ezzy, I think, said on this morning show, he doesn't know if it's going to be, special teams are going to be that big a factor, I think. And I do wonder. I mean, we don't know. It's a big unknown whether there will or won't be. So we'll see if the Jets are able to do it. And we know, look, it's something they worked on. That's one thing that's worth noting, where they were working on it yesterday in practice. So they're, I should say, playing with the man advantage. So we'll see how they're able to kind of overcome the limitations of not having Nikolai Ehlers and Gabriel Velarde.
It's also worth noting regarding the Jets' power play that for a team that controls the pace of play and has controlled the possession numbers, significantly all season long, but particularly so, over the last couple of months, they haven't been drawing a lot of penalties.
Yes.
Now, whether that's a function of the officials changing the standard, and maybe now that, the playoffs get underway in, less than 2 hours time, maybe the standard changes again and that results in more power play opportunities for the Jets. But if you go back and you look, the Jets, are drawing fewer penalties than you would expect a team to be drawing given their strong possession numbers over the course of this season. Again, something else to keep an eye on, something else to keep a factor of. But I do think that the series is going to be won or lost at 5-on-5. And at 5-on-5 in particular, that is where the Winnipeg Jets, I do believe, have an advantage over the St. Louis Blues, particularly in the, let's call it the bottom six forwards of the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, and we talked about it a little bit, and obviously we can talk about it more here. Like the St. Louis Blues third line, we talked about it with Jeremy Rutherford. You've got Matthew Joseph, who's obviously a physical player, Oscar Sundqvist, who's part of that 2019 Stanley Cup win, and Zach Bolduc, who's a rookie or second year. I'm not sure if he qualified it as a rookie, but he had a great season for the Blues. But I still like Lowry, Tanev, and Appleton. I still give the advantage to that line, not just offensively, because obviously that line, you're not expecting a ton of goals, even though I wouldn't be surprised if Lowry popped in a goal tonight. But that line, I think, we know is going to go up against the Robert Thomas line. Anytime Scott Arniel, Dave, can get that line up against the Thomas, Buchnevich, Jake Neighbors line, they're going to do that. And I know what you're saying, Drew. I think, if you look back a couple weeks to that game on the 7th of April, the game was controlled at even strength by the Jets.
Yes.
And we've said this so many times, and it's a hockey cliche, but when the Jets are controlling play, when they're pressuring the opposition's team, when they're moving the puck quickly out of their zone, making sure that all those little things like coaches talk about, making sure the defensive gaps and everything like that, right? Like the Jets there's a template, and we saw that most recently. Dave mentioned the game against Vegas. I agree, the game against Dallas. In Dallas, these games where the Jets are able to impose their will on the opposition. It's a style of play. It's a team style of play. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm not as worried that Ehlers and Velarde are out tonight. Obviously, Velarde we expect back at some point in the first round. But especially with the absence of Ehlers, I still think they're going to be successful against the Blues. Like, I think they're going to win some games, the Blues are. But I just think that the Jets still have the advantage with their depth and the style they play. But that's not to take anything away from the 19-4-3 run that the Blues went on. There's a lot of talented players there. We talked about Thomas, very underrated. Jordan Kyrou, Buchnevich we mentioned. Colton Parayko's back. Cam Fowler has been a nice addition for the Blues. Binnington, we know, is a solid goalie, even though he's erratic, and that I think is something, guys, to watch.
Even
a couple goals go. Sorry, I was just going to say, Binnington lets a couple goals in in the first period.
Yeah,
could be Joel Hofer time not too long after that.
Well, it's funny you say that, because even after the Four Nations Cup, I still think that Binnington can be had, and he can be rattled more so than. Connor Hellebuyck is such a mentally strong goaltender that even if you and I and other people would say that he wasn't at the peak of his game that day, he would disagree. He would still say, no, I like my details. I like this. I like that. Whatever, the mental fortitude that he demonstrates, whether or not, we agreed with it, that's sort of where he is. Jordan Binnington is a much more emotional goaltender. He's not a goaltender who's afraid to mix it up and scrum. And sometimes I think that takes him a little bit out of his comfort element, Dave, and it sort of distracts him, maybe takes his focus away from locking in as the goaltender.
Do I look nervous, Drew?
You do not look nervous, Dave.
I'm a little nervous. I'm not wearing a hat. It's being pointed out by the I'm letting it flow right now. I'm looking like Gary M, not Dave M. But the truth is that, this is, I was just thinking as you were talking, I'm like, well, let's be realistic. Jordan Binnington was excellent when he needed to be. That overtime was incredible the way he played. And so he is a big game goalie. There's no question about it. Game 7, Stanley Cup Finals. There, he's seen some things. But I mean, at the same time, he's also not Dominic Hasek. He's not Marty Brodeur. He's not, he's a very good goalie. He's an excellent goaltender. But again, I think you're right. I think there are limitations. I think there's ways to get in his grill. I think at the end of the day, it's like all these teams. Like, look, even Connor Hellebuck is an excellent goaltender who we can see that. Look what Vegas was able to do, right? Look what Colorado was able to do. They got traffic in front of Connor Hellebuck, and they actually took shots from distance and scored on him because of the traffic, because of the chaos they caused in front. So, St. Louis doesn't necessarily have the same size, the same bodies to be able to do that. But at the same time, we'll see what they do. And they're a very well-coached team. So that they're going to try and effectively do that to Connor Hellebuck. But to my mind, I think you have an opportunity there to do that, to try and get into the face and try and create that disruption.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the center of the ice is going to be the biggest battle, I think, in tonight's in the series. And we know that both of these teams, St. Louis, especially since they made the coaching change, they've emphasized not letting their opponent get into this middle of the ice. Yeah. That, of course, has been the mantra of the Winnipeg Jets for the last 2 or 3 years, about making sure the middle of that ice is a no-go zone for the opponent. Frankly, I think the Jets are better at preventing the Blues from getting there than the Blues will be at preventing the Jets from getting there. I think that the Jets' depth of forward and the fact that every single one of them knows exactly what they need to do to what victory looks like. They know what their game needs to look like for success. And I think that I think their mindset, they are being the Winnipeg Jets, I think their mindset is that if we take care of our business, if we do our job, the St. Louis Blues, no matter what they throw at us, will not be able to overcome our level of execution.
Yeah, you put it very well there. And I think you're going to see pushes from the St. Louis Blues. I don't think you can expect every game to go exactly like it did. I keep referencing that game on April 7th, but right. I think look, you hear about measuring stick games and all that stuff, and we usually make fun of those words, right? But I think it's significant because of where it happened and because they stopped the winning streak. And at that time, the Jets were holding off Dallas for first in the Central. Like, so you forget, guys, it wasn't until the third last game of the year, or the fourth last game of the year, that the Jets clinched the division in the conference, right? Yep. Like it didn't happen in game 70. It happened in game 78 or 79, whatever it was. But you're absolutely right, Drew. I think, again, this is a big if, but it's relevant here because the Jets play differently when they're dominant. That goes without saying, but the Jets have shown that they can play a certain style, and it's very effective, and it can completely shut teams down. Like the win against the Blues, the win against the Stars in Dallas, the win against the Golden Knights in Vegas. These weren't kind of impressive wins. These were statement wins, even though I made fun of myself. Dominant wins.
They were dominant wins against high quality opponents. Right, and you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not saying that means that the Jets are going to sweep the Blues. That's not what I'm saying. But the Jets have the ability when they play like that, whether Ehlers is in the lineup, whether Velarde's in the lineup, they have lots of soldiers on this team. This team is full of talented hockey players. And the Blues, there's going to be moments. Again, I see this series being very close. Like, would I be shocked? Like, I think Dave picked the Jets in 5. I'm not going to be surprised if the Jets win this series in 5. I think that would be great. I mean, they would have more extra rest and let Dallas and Colorado beat up on each other in round 1 and then wait and see who wins that. So that would be awesome. Yeah. But I'm looking at these, and I think you guys would agree, in the 4 games the Jets and Blues played, they were close games, maybe with the exception of the April 7th game, right? So there's a lot of talent.
And even that was close on the
close score-wise, but it wasn't really close. We know how dominant they were, right? So it's going to be interesting, and there's going to be some, I think, players that surprise Jets fans, like Brandon Tanev. I think we talked to Sean Reynolds about Brandon Tanev.
You had a personal conversation with him.
No, I'm just saying Brandon Tanev, I think, because he's on the third line, there's a little bit more of an expectation, a little bit more offense is expected out of him, for example, right? Nino Niederreiter.
And that third line. So let's talk about the third line matchup in this game. You got Tanev, Lowry, and Appleton for the Winnipeg Jets. And we know that the St. Louis Blues are going to counter with that line you spoke about. Zach Bolduc, the young player, second year, had a really good early.
He had 20 goals this year.
Yeah, I mean, he really blossomed underneath Jim Montgomery. He became a better player as a result under Jim Montgomery than he was earlier in the year under Drew Bannister before he was dismissed as Blues head coach. But you still would take the third line for the Winnipeg Jets, the Lowry, Appleton, Tanev line over Joseph, Sundqvist, and Bolduc. In I think a piece in the Athletic, I believe it was Murat who was getting some commentary, and one of the people that he spoke to, the person was granted an anonymity to speak. Honestly, said that right now Adam Lowry might be the best third line center in the NHL. The way he's able to control the flow of hockey on the ice when that's happening. And I think it's worth noting as well that the last time the Jets and the Blues played, that April 7th game, and as we talked about it on this morning's show, this was a Jets team without Ehlers, without Velarde, and without Pionk in that game. So they'll have one of those three back. That Scheifele's line got the Robert Thomas line and won that matchup.
Right.
Where the best on best, the scoring line and the scoring line, the Jets scoring line, the Jets offensive stalwarts were better than the St. Louis offensive stalwarts.
By the way, what is this? Dave's getting water from producer Tim. I don't
coughing.
get a water.
He's coughing.
I'm trying to be subtle.
What am I not parched?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you're parched or not. You don't look parched. You look quite thirsty. Or quite satiated.
Colby Spence.
Colby Spence, a legal curve photographer, is here on site here in downtown Winnipeg. We're in Cityplace. We're at the food court. This is your destination ahead of the start of Game 1 between the Blues and the Jets. We know it's a 5:00 puck drop. We'll be here right up until the pregame.
As he's about to give his first ever to Greg, he's about to give his first ever autograph.
As he's going to sign a jersey over there, Greg is waiting patiently. He's got Dave's signature and he's got my signature
and
already.
He's got the illegal curve one at the bottom as well.
There you go, perfect. We're signing autographs. We're having fun.
As soon as I sign that jersey, it's going to be devalued about $100.
Immediately, it's not even worth it. It's valuable to Greg, though. That's nice to see. But Dave, that to me is another challenge. I think Scheifele and Connor are looking forward to that challenge tonight against the Robert Thomas line, against whomever Scott Arniel trusts them to go out and play against. He's going to say, we're going to win this line because Scheifele and Connor, the way they've been playing this year and the way that they've been combined, and Alex Iafallo, we know how defensively responsible he is. That's a line that the Jets feel that they're going to be in a good position against the Blues opponents tonight.
Again, the secret to my success, Michael J. Fox, is the fact that you need to have a good defensive style of play. I mean, that, and Scheifele and Connor, that's not exactly been their bread and butter, but we know that, as you talked about on this morning show, when you actually use the numbers, that's an area of improvement this year. And we've seen it. Like I said, Kyle Connor made that bad play. I don't remember what game it was, but then he went back and he made the kill in the Jets zone right in the end. So it was a nice.
Was that the St. Louis game?
No, I think it was more recent than that. It felt like it was like.
Who did they play after St. Louis at home? I have to go back in the schedule, but it was.
But you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly the play. And then it was a poor defense, poor soft play at the offensive blue line. Right. The other team transitioned up the ice and then the Jet zone. And then Luke Shen was the one who rubbed out the forward for. I'm going to go look back at the schedule right now.
Was it the Edmonton game?
No. It was a meaningful game. It wasn't a meaningless
Anaheim game.
No. It was, again, meaningful. That's a meaning. I'm good. Jeez, what game
Buffalo? Was it Buffalo?
No, you're too far. Too far.
I was joking about Buffalo. They haven't played.
You know what? It was the Dallas game. It wasn't in Winnipeg. It was on the road in Dallas.
I never said it was in Winnipeg.
I was thinking it was in Winnipeg at first, but it was in Dallas.
Yeah, it was the Dallas game.
And then he came back, and it was the 3-0 goal, I believe. The breakaway goal. It was the 3-0 goal. The one off the nice plays by Jared Anderson, Dolan, and Josh Morris.
The little like one touch, right?
Yes.
So, but what we're ultimately coming to is the fact that at the end of the day, you've got a guy guys in Scheifele and Connor, because those are the guys. Those are your drivers, as he called them, X factors, or that was a discussion point, I should say. I'm pretty sure actually I introduced the topic, so sorry, Ezzy, for saying that. But I mean, that's what we're talking about. Can these guys be the X factors? And it's not just offensively. You need those guys to be your offensive drivers, no question about it. But you also need them to play strong defensively. And that is a commitment we've seen from this team all year long. So why are they going to change? They're not going to change. They're going to keep the consistency of their style of play that we've seen for 82 games already this season.
I would agree with that. We consistently bring in a guest at the bottom of the hour, and that guest is standing right over there, Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. So I'll tell you what, we'll go to break here live at Cityplace, the Illegal Curve pregame show. When we come back, Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press joins us to continue discussing Game 1 between the Jets and the Blues. We are live here. We're in the food court. Come grab a bite to eat, listen to the remainder of the program. Tons of Jets fans everywhere, decked out in white. It's a party in downtown Winnipeg. It's a party here at Cityplace. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. It's the Illegal Curve pregame show prior to Game 1 between the Jets and the Blues. It continues with Mike McIntyre after these commercial messages.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. Cityplace is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make Cityplace your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime. Visit Cityplace at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
To the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, special pregame edition of the show. Drew Mandel, Ezra Ginsburg, Dave Minuk, and Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press joins us now.
If Mike's really good, we give him $5.
Yeah, there you go. We're holding on to the $5 until after your appearance, Mike, and then we will grade you accordingly if you make it or not.
I got to get Neil Pionk's agent.
Exactly right. Pionk,
although, just to be clear, thank you very much. That was from one of their subscribers who says they can't use the super chat, so they wanted to give Timmy some coffee money, but we appreciate
like
that.
Illegal Curve will take, like, if you have like rolled up pennies, like we'll take those.
I mean, considering other things people could throw at you, $5 is actually, I expected something else. Like maybe
Mike, you missed the
fruit or a vegetable, maybe a tomato.
Honestly, you guys were signing autographs, and then all of a sudden the $5 bill appeared. I mean, are these guys charging people for autographs? Is that what Mike and Ezzy are doing now?
And every time Mike and I are in the same location, we're always signing autographs. So it's like, it's not just here, it's everywhere. Like,
it tells you the level of excitement that's in the air, Mike. And you wrote about it, a great feature in today's Free Press, and you said that it was one of the more fun articles you've written in the last little while. Sort of the home ice advantage, the whiteout, and we know it, we all live it, we've we've breathed it for decades at this point in time. But maybe for those who haven't picked up their edition of the Winnipeg Free Press yet, or who haven't accessed it online, even though they all should be subscribing, of course, what did you find out about the whiteout and the home ice advantage come playoff time?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Stanley Cup, the NHL playoffs, this is the toughest tournament in sports, right? And I would say home ice advantage in hockey compared to, whether we were talking basketball, baseball, football, it doesn't necessarily mean what, sometimes it's not an advantage. It actually can work against you. But here in Winnipeg, I mean, those of us who've grown up here, I'm born and raised, just had my 50th birthday earlier this.
And where did you have your 50th birthday,
At the
Mike?
Great Rumors Comedy Club.
There you go, buddy. Got to throw a bone out to the sponsor.
Absolutely. It was a great night that my wife surprised me with. But, being a born and raised Winnipegger, there's just nothing like this time of year. And just walking over here, this city feels alive. Downtown feels alive. You can just feel the energy, the excitement. So I wanted to do a piece that kind of looked beyond just the hockey element, what it does for community, what it does for the economy. Certainly this is good for Winnipeg, and a long playoff run would be great for downtown, would be great for the economy. But I did want to look at the X's and O's part too, the hockey part of it. Like, let's be frank, guys, the Jets haven't been very good on home ice in the playoffs.
It's true.
2019 against the Blues, they lost all 3 home games. Last year, they won game 1, of course, but then they went on to lose the next 4, including 2 here. And 2 years ago against Vegas, they didn't win any home games, 0-3. For whatever reason, the Jets haven't been able to channel the home ice advantage that I think anybody who comes here, who sees what this building is like, we're going to see it in 90 minutes or so. I mean, it's going to absolutely explode. Why haven't they been able to use that to their advantage? So I chatted with a bunch of folks, a couple ex-coaches, including Rick Bowness, Bruce Boudreau. Bruce Boudreau, by the way, he knows a thing or two about not using home ice to their advantage.
The losses in Game 7.
Oh, yes. He was the first to point it out. I was 1-7 in Game 7s over his career. And in fact, he knows what it's like to be a President's Trophy winner with home ice advantage that doesn't take advantage of that. His Washington Capitals were upset by the Montreal Canadiens, and Bruce joked that he's thankful he has nothing to do with this year's Capitals-Montreal series. But look, I mean, I think one of the themes of this year for this Jets team is they were always going to be judged what happens from Game 83 on, but the first 82 were all about, in some ways, healing, in some ways, preparing. And we're about to see if this team that I think a lot of us think is built differently, both physically and maybe most importantly, mentally, some of that those calluses that Scott Arneal's talked about, can they buck the recent trends of what we've seen in recent playoff years? And that's the big question facing these Jets. But yeah, just from a whiteout perspective, community, for the team itself. I mean, we talked to players this week. The players love this. They drive in, they see the fans, they feel the energy. And, this is a big selling point for a market that doesn't get the best rep sometimes, is a place no one wants to play. I think we've put that to bed in many ways lately, including some of these signings like Neil Pionk and Alex Iafallo this week, but also when Winnipeg is showcased on a grand stage. And tonight they're going to have the stage to themselves, right?
Yeah.
This is just a huge opportunity to sell not just the hockey team, but the city, the community, and so much more about this place.
Mike, I agree with you 100% when you said there's no better place than this time of year and a whiteout. Like when you're just walking around and the weather was beautiful out today. It wasn't too warm in the morning, but it just continued to get better hour by hour. And just seeing all the white jerseys and the signs and kids and the makeup and everything like that, there's nothing better. I agree with you 100% on that. I wanted to ask you about what storyline are you going to be following the most? Because there's Dave documented, and I'm sure you've written about it for the Winnipeg Free Press. There's no shortage of storylines. Like, I look at the Shen brothers storyline alone as just an amazing storyline, not just because they're brothers, but because Braden Shen, there was a good chance he was going to be traded before the trade deadline, and obviously Luke Shen with all of the travel going from Nashville to Pittsburgh. But for you, what's the kind of key storyline? Is it possible to pick one, or is there one that you're focusing on?
Well, I mean, I think exercising the playoff demons, the playoff ghosts, like that's the storyline, right? I mean, these Jets have done things that no Jets team has ever done in Winnipeg's rich NHL history. This is the best regular season team ever, period. 1.0 or 2.0 eras. And, you know, there's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of pressure. And obviously a tough go here in the first round. I mean, that would be extremely painful on many levels for many people. So, I mean, big picture for sure. How do the Jets handle that pressure? That, you know, they've raised the bar so high now, they've got to find a way to get over that bar. I think, though, if we're just breaking down, you know, the in-game storylines, to me, it's got to be the goaltending. And, again, Connor Hellebuck has just done things that no Winnipeg Jets in fact, he's done things that very few NHL goaltenders, period, have ever done in a season. But, again, and he sort of wears it just as his team does, some of these past playoff failures. So what does Connor Hellebuck look like tonight and as this series progresses? And we know Jordan Binnington is a guy that can elevate his game. He did it in 2019, which the Jets saw firsthand. He did it again in the Four Nations, which Connor Hellebuck saw firsthand, as did the whole country of Canada. So to me, that storyline, the Hellebuck Binnington, and, you know, Hellebuck not just battling Jordan Binnington, but in some ways battling his own playoff track record, that's one to really focus on for sure.
And Mike, sorry, we usually, you know, it's usually a cheerocracy here. Usually we do one question at a time, but I just wanted to follow up. You know, you mentioned the Hellebuck-Binnington storyline, which we talked about before you jumped on, which I think is key for so many reasons, like you said, because of 2019 and the Four Nations. Do you think, though, for the Blues to ultimately win the series, do you think Binnington has to steal a couple games, or do you think the Blues as a team possibly win a series? Because, like, to me, I look at it and it's a big enough mismatch that probably Binnington outplaying Hellebuck, not just for the series, but like stealing games might have to happen.
I would agree. I mean, I think the Jets, whether it's their power play, which hasn't been great lately, but we know potentially what that power play can do. I mean, if you just lay out these teams on paper, for sure, the Jets have an advantage in many statistical categories. Goals for, goals against, special teams. I would say the Jets are the deeper team. One thing the Blues have is I think they have the most experienced blue line in all of hockey. And obviously, you know, they've got Colton Parayko back now. That's a big return for them. But on paper, the Jets would have a huge advantage in goal, just statistically what these two goalies have done. But again, playoffs are a different animal. So I would agree, Ezzy, that certainly if you're the Blues, I don't think you can expect to just win 4 games just on talent alone here, that you can outlast a deep Winnipeg team. And I know the Jets have a couple of key injuries, which obviously, you know, maybe balance the scales a little bit more than they otherwise would have been. If you've got Ehlers and Velarde in your top 6, especially on the power play, those are big weapons the Jets don't have right now. But yeah, I would agree. I mean, Binnington's probably going to have to steal a game or two. The thing is, we know Jordan Binnington is more than capable of stealing a game or two. He's kind of made a career out of it.
So, Mike, if I know we've just talked about the goaltenders, but from an X factor perspective, because that's one of the questions I posed to the boys earlier on our morning show. But from your perspective, who's your biggest Jets X factor?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about playoffs, right? Is heroes emerge that, you know, we were joking yesterday down at practice. I said to somebody, I think it was Ken Wiebe, actually, I said, you know, even a month ago, who would have had Jared Anderson-Dolan playing like in the starting lineup for the play? He wasn't even with the Jets. I don't think he's the guy that we would have thought even would have been coming up on a recall. And he's not only kind of earned the extended look here, he's cemented himself now in the lineup. And
can I also give a plug to your awesome story, by the way, about the Jared Anderson Dolan.
Yeah,
that was awesome, Mike.
It was cool to chat with him last week when we were in Dallas, I think, and he talked about being raised by two moms and just the role they've played in his life. So there are guys that we're probably not talking about at all who could play a big role. And so in our chat yesterday about Anderson Dolan being in the lineup, Kenny mentioned, maybe he's this year's Joe Morrow. Remember Joe Morrow back?
Joe Morrow got the tying goal.
Yes.
Remember they were down 1-0.
Like Jets legend Joe Morrow.
Well, it's funny because now it's. I heard you. I was obviously
you were there. Yeah,
I heard the Joe Morrow talk. I got a chuckle out of it.
So I'll throw a name out there. How about Morgan Barron, who I think is playing the best hockey, but he looks like a completely different player. To me, I watch Morgan Barron now and think this guy could be a second line center. I had this conversation last week with someone, and I said, I think Morgan Barron, I think it was Dan Robertson, actually. We were sitting in the press box in Dallas, I guess.
Name drop.
It was Dan and Kevin Sawyer. It was with the TSN crew because they weren't doing that game. So they were sitting beside me in the press box. We were talking about Barron, and I said, watching him play and with the tools he has, could he be the second line center? We were going back and forth. And they said, I don't know if he's got enough offense, which I reminded them Vlad Domestikov's been the second line center all year. He's got 11 goals, and I don't think he's scored in
19 games.
Right, almost a quarter of a season. Yeah. Barron has 8 goals, and that's with 0 power play time, all playing in a bottom 6 role. But there's a guy, Morgan Barron, who remind me, he was injured last year, right?
Yeah, he missed the first.
Did he miss every game?
He for sure missed the first game. I remember he wasn't available for the first game, but
didn't he have the eye?
That was 2 years ago against Vegas, where Lauren Brossois' skate cut him.
Right.
I know he wasn't. I remember because I was looking at something recently, and he was. I was looking at from something from last year, and I remember I had written something that said Rick Bowness saying Morgan Barron not available for game 1. So I don't think he
feel like it might have been the whole series. In fact, whatever the case, Morgan Barron. With his size,
he did not play a game last year.
He didn't play a game. Okay, so there's a guy that, to me, he's built for playoff hockey. He's big, he's fast, he's tenacious, and now he's comfortable and he's confident, and it's showing. He scored those 2 beautiful back-to-back breakaway goals in consecutive games, but even the games where he doesn't score now, he's getting chances. And so to me, that is a guy, and really the Jets' 4th line could be a difference maker. I look at the Blues' 4th line, to me, and this is as it's currently constructed. Right. There's a scenario where if they get Ehlers and Velarde back, your 4th line could be Alex Iafallo, Brandon Tanev, and Morgan Barron, which I would argue is maybe the best 4th line in hockey. Yeah. So that there's the X factor to me. Morgan Barron is a guy I think that's we're starting to see him really come of age and break out. This is a bigger stage now, and this is the kind of hockey that I would expect he would thrive in.
Hey, well, but Mike, did Dan say that? Did he at least reveal his Eastern bias, his East Coast bias,
his Halifax bias?
His roots? Because whenever he has those conversations, you always have to qualify. With Dan, you're a little bit biased when you talk about.
To be clear, though, I was the one raising Morgan Barron. He was a little skeptical. He wondered if the offense was there.
Mike's an honorary Nova Scotian.
Exactly. I was. Maybe it's because I just chatted with Rick Bowness. I had a great chat with him the other day, and so there's another Nova Scotian, of course, who, by the way, is very much rooting for the Jets. Probably won't come as a surprise to you. Rick Bowness's dream Stanley Cup scenario: Winnipeg versus Ottawa. His son is the assistant GM in Ottawa, of course.
Mike, isn't that kind of like the Shens, though? How do you choose between
it?
One
would be very difficult for sure.
That's a good. With all due respect to Rick, I hope he would choose his son over the city.
I
of
would
Winnipeg.
too. Well, I know he's got deep ties to Winnipeg,
but choose your son.
They're not blood.
Choose your blood. Exactly right.
You got to decide. But I will say this, Mike. There's only one person who doesn't want that: the NHL.
Yes, that would be. I mean, I'm sure Sportsnet wouldn't mind, but the greater NHL, yes, they would. ESPN, all that, but they would not enjoy that.
I'm not sure the casual fan in the south of the border is tuning in for the Jets Senators Stanley Cup final. We're a long ways away from that, of course. This is the Illegal Curve pregame show. We're live at Cityplace in the food court here on the second floor. A great crowd, tons of Jets fans wearing their whites, filtering their way through, sitting around having a bite to eat before the party gets started. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press is our guest. Mike, Scott Arniel's had a great year as behind the bench for the Winnipeg Jets. Entering today's game, 0 games as the head coach of a playoff team. Much ado about nothing, pardon the pun, or do you think that there is going to be a little bit of maybe of an adjustment for Scott to settle in with the playoff nerves, let's say?
Well, if you're the Jets, you hope that he settles in like he did in his first game of kind of his second chance, and that was a nice 6-0 win on opening night in Edmonton. No, I think that is a storyline for sure. In fact, I asked Scott Arniel yesterday about it. To me, this is a moment. He's been waiting his whole career for this, and he didn't get too personal. I didn't expect he'd kind of bare his soul yesterday, but I gotta think deep down this is truly special. This is a guy who, after the Columbus sort of debacle, now almost 15 years ago, he didn't know if he'd ever get another chance as a head coach. He's been in the playoffs a lot as an assistant, as an associate, but he's never been the guy making the calls. And I think that's something that works to the advantage of Arniel and the Jets. This is a guy who he's been around some great coaches, Rick Bowness, included here in Winnipeg, but he's seen what hasn't worked. He's seen what mistakes coaches have made, adjustments that weren't made. And I think specifically of the last 2 playoff years, sure. He may have had things that he was suggesting to Rick Bowness. I think we all know the buck stopped with Rick Bowness. He was one of the traits most good coaches have is they are stubborn as hell. And Rick Bowness was very stubborn. And Scott Arniel may have had other ideas last year on things he would have liked to have tried, whether it's lineup decisions or systemic. And I think when we look at the last 2 years for the Jets in the playoffs, what's the one thing that stands out? They won game 1 both times. Clearly, their opponent then made adjustments in game 2, and the Jets clearly did not make the adjustments to the adjustment. That's what playoffs are all about. When you're facing the same team potentially 7 straight times, it's like a chess match. And for whatever reason, Rick Bowness, the Jets, they weren't able to counter those moves last year. I think that's where Scott Arniel kind of being so close, but not the guy until now. Those are lessons I suspect he's learned along the way that he'll be able to channel. And I think we've seen, I know some people will still, nitpick at various lineup decisions and whatnot, but the overall body of work speaks for itself. He's the coach of the best team in hockey over 82 games. And I think Scott Arniel, he's probably as excited, maybe more excited than his players. He may not be showing it. I just think this is such a meaningful thing for a guy who's, let's face it, he's a hockey lifer. He's also kind of a Winnipeg lifer. He knows what this isn't some import to Winnipeg who really doesn't have a grasp on the history here. Right. Nobody knows what this means to the community more than Scott Arniel.
Absolutely. And we want to put you on the spot now, Mike, because obviously there's a lot of...
Hang on. Ezzy wants to put you on the spot right now, Mike.
For us.
Yeah, he doesn't speak for us. We don't want to do anything.
I know you guys want to give me lots of time to prepare, right? So
okay, Mike. I thought we, as a triumvirate, I spoke for the 3 of us.
Not a chance.
I want to hear the question first, and then I'll decide.
Okay, okay, Mike. I'll put you on the spot then. Obviously, Gabe Vilardi's not going to be playing this afternoon / tonight. It keeps throwing me off. The 5 o'clock start. Yeah. I'm someone who thinks 5 o'clock is still the afternoon. There's some people who think that it's the night, so it's throwing me off. But
can you understand why all season long, every game's been, double headers, 6 and 9, right? Why 5 and 7:30? Somebody asked me that, and I said, I have no earthly answer for why they decided this game of all games has to start at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, 6 and 8:30 would have made a little more sense, sure. Especially because the other game's in the Central Time Zone, right? It's in Dallas, so 8:30 is not out of the realm of.
We're going to see 8:30 starts.
We are indeed,
in this series.
How about the Minnesota Wild? They're going to see a 10 p.m. Central start. Now that's in Vegas, but still, good luck getting that in the print edition of the Pioneer Press. But yeah, I mean, I think this is technically. I'll call this an afternoon game because there was no morning skate. Yeah, right. That's the deal breaker to me. If it was 6 o'clock, I'd say it's an evening game.
Okay, so what I was going to ask you before Drew really
that's not the on-the-spot question.
Okay, so
can you use a clock is the question, Mike.
If I ever get this out, Gabe Vilardi, when does he come back in this series?
Well, I think I think the schedule in some ways works to Winnipeg's advantage here, as bizarre as it is. You look at like Florida, Tampa, they aren't even starting till Tuesday. The Jets are already going to have 2 games in the bank by then. But the Jets kind of make up that time. Their series then, after these first 2, it gets severely stretched to the point, if it went 7, they're actually like probably the last series to finish. When you look at the 4 game 7s that would be on the 2 weeks from tomorrow, so that's like 16 days that this series can stretch, which I think is actually beneficial to the Jets. To me, if Gabe Vilardi is not able to play today, I'd be really surprised if he'd be able to play Monday. But then that takes us to Thursday, which is when game 3 is. And, you know, it's hard to say because we haven't really seen, we know Gabe Vilardi's skating. We know he's putting in the work. We haven't really seen him yet in a team environment to get a sense of just how intense that skating is. And again, it's odd. We don't know exactly what the injury is. Like, it'd be one thing if we knew a guy like, you know, had a broken foot or something like Dylan Sandberg, and then we knew when he was skating how he was ramping up. We don't know exactly what's bothering him. So, you know, to me, I think part of it might be determined on the situation and the urgency, right? Sure. I mean, let's face it, the Jets are down 2 games to none, and it's shifting to St. Louis on Thursday. Even if he's not 100%, he might be knocking down that door to say, I got to get in. So I would say game 3 at the earliest. And, you know, I'd say potentially as far as like game 5, which again, there's going to be some breaks built in. In fact, games 3, 4, and 5 all have 2 days in between them, which is probably good news for the Jets. And not just Gabe Vilardi, Nikolai Ehlers as well, sure, who we know is week to week. He's not even skating yet. So his return, you would presume, is going to be behind Vilardi's. I'm not sure if we even see Ehlers in this series, even if it were to go the distance. Yeah. Gabe Vilardi, though, if I had to make a bet, I would think we see him at some point. $5. Dave's $5 is on the line. I do think we see him in the series. I'd say somewhere between game 3 and 5, 3 the earliest, and maybe 5 the latest.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
You heard it here first, folks. Mike McIntyre promises Gabe Vilardi back between games 3 and games 5. You know, Mike, just shifting a little bit to the signings this week. I mean, you talk about excitement. There's a lot of, and the palpable, and you can feel it and everything like that. But I mean, that created a lot of excitement as well, and a little bit unexpected. We knew, obviously, according to your colleague Kenny Wiebe last month, who broke the news about Alex Iafallo wanting to stay in Winnipeg, and then of course he gets that deal done. And then Neil Pionk, again, rumblings that he wanted to stay. Sure enough, he signs a deal. And are you a little surprised though that these deals, again, this is not from Kevin Cheveldayoff's mouth last year. This was not the way they were going to do it. Remember, they didn't want to upset the apple cart. They left everyone. They didn't sign Dylan DeMello, even though they wanted to. Brendan Dillon. They let them go to free agency, then decided. So last year was one way. This year, completely different. Were you a little surprised the way it kind of played out?
I mean, maybe initially, but the more you think about it, I just think it makes so much sense. Again, this is the best team in the league this year. Why wouldn't you, if the increasing salary cap creates a situation where you can essentially keep the band together, right? And that band is making some pretty darn good music right now. Why wouldn't you? And again, it'd be one thing if we were talking about a team or a market where you can just plug guys in, like you have your choice July 1st. Yeah. Okay, these guys want to leave, no problem. We'll just go get the next version of them. Right. Well, we know that isn't always the case with Winnipeg, although I would like to think that maybe what the Jets are doing here, what they're building, and certainly if they had a long playoff run, that a lot of players might be saying, maybe I misjudged this place, that guys that go there seem to want to love it, seem to love it and want to stay there. Right. And to me, that's the most interesting part about Pionk and Iafallo, who have a ton of similarities, both undrafted, both American, both had no choice but to come here. They were traded here. They didn't have no trade.
Went to UMD?
Right. Yes, that's true.
Minnesota Duluth.
But they didn't have no trade clauses that they had to waive or anything like we've seen in the past. So these guys were told by their teams, you're going to this new hockey home. And clearly they've fallen in love with it to the point that rather than go see what their worth would be in a couple months from now, and I think we would agree, guys, and you see some of the projections, I'm not saying they gave the Jets a hometown discount. I do think that it's possible both could have got a little more from a team that maybe isn't in a position to win right away, but has money to spend. Iafallo, he's a Buffalo native. Maybe the Buffalo Sabres, with all their young guys, would have thrown a bunch of cash at an Alex Iafallo.
It goes to show that winning is a great drug.
It is.
I mean, it's, for all these players, they, to your point, Alex Iafallo could have gone to Buffalo and maybe he would have been able to dig them out of their malaise that has been a decade and a half long. Oh, Winnipeg versus Buffalo weather-wise, I'm not sure that there's a big difference there.
You have a dry cold, Drew.
They have a dry cold day. Exact lake effect snow.
Yes.
We just have, wind.
But is Buffalo winning the President's Trophy in the next 3 years, or
do you trust the ownership group? Do
Right.
you trust the management in Buffalo?
And Mike, just to add to your point, isn't that kind of what Scott Arniel said, just talking in his media availability yesterday, when he said something to the effect of, well, that's why you don't know. There's great unknowns when you go elsewhere, but here you know what you've got.
Exactly. And, these guys, and I think it's almost because of the situation in Winnipeg, the travel schedule can be unique. Because they're in the middle of Canada, kind of in the middle of everything, the Jets have long road trips. There's a lot of bonding that goes on. These guys spend more time with each other than teams in other markets do. And so friendships are formed. And I think when you have a good thing, and clearly the Jets have a good thing going, just, the old saying, if it ain't broke, well, it's not really broken.
Yeah.
There's no need. If you can retain as many of your homegrown guys, and more importantly, keep that window open, not just for this year. We know the window's wide open this year. The Jets, they hope that window stays open. And that's the promise that Kevin Cheveldayoff made to Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele.
Yeah.
And I think, both those guys were asked about that this week. I do think they got this ball rolling when they signed. There's been a lot of other guys following suit, and we've now seen it with, whether it's Vlad Nemestikov, Nino Niederreiter, Dylan DeMello, guys that were traded here who then retained. These aren't drafted and developed, and the Jets have done a great job of retaining those guys too.
Right.
I think it's helping to rewrite some of the old narratives that are out there about Winnipeg.
Trade and retain is the new draft and develop.
Instead of draft, yes, or draft and destroy, as some in the past would call it.
Last one for you, Mike. Obviously, we're now getting close to an hour to puck drop in downtown Winnipeg. A great atmosphere here in Cityplace as well. Cole Perfetti. We know last year, the playoffs, he got that one game, and it was almost just everything about the end of the year last year for Cole Perfetti was a disaster, whereas this year, the way he's ending, he looks like a different player altogether. That second line for the Jets needs a driver. That driver, in my mind, is now Cole Perfetti.
Yes.
How do you think he handles this opportunity and the challenge that is now put before him as not being able just to be a passenger, but to have to carry that second line and win your minutes against your opponent on the Blues?
No, it's a great question. And going back to your earlier questions about X Factor, and I talked about Morgan Barron, because I do think depth and role players tend to play big roles in playoff series. If we're talking about a top six guy, no question, it's Cole Perfetti, a guy that was a healthy scratch for the first 4 games last year. He only got in the last game. This is a guy who he's kind of had a bit of a chip on his shoulder all year, and he's used that in a very powerful way to the point that we don't even recognize him anymore. He looks faster, he looks bigger, he looks stronger. And
tougher.
he does, absolutely. And he's going to need all that in a series like this against a team like the Blues. But he is a guy that I suspect, like I mentioned, that Scott Arniel's kind of been waiting for this chance. I got to think Cole Perfetti's been waiting for this chance as well. This is an opportunity for him to shine. You're right. That line, it does need a driver. Again, it's now got Nino Niederreiter up where Ehlers used to be. So it's Nemestikov, Niederreiter, and Perfetti. I think both Nemestikov and Niederreiter, who, Niederreiter picked it up a little bit down the stretch offensively, but those are, again, 2 veteran guys that should be built for playoff hockey. In theory, that should be a line that can do some great things for the Jets. But you're right, Drew, this isn't a case where Cole Perfetti is going to get dragged along by his line mates. In fact, he's the guy that can maybe do the dragging because of his evolution as a player. And to me, if we were talking about top 3 or 5 storylines or developments this season, Cole Perfetti's emergence, especially in the second half of the year, would be in that list for me. It's been quite something to see for sure.
on the record, make a prediction.
I have the Jets winning in 6 games. That's what it's not going to be easy. The Blues are going to give them everything they have. But I think those calluses, those scars, those scabs, whatever you want to call them, I think this is a different Jets team, especially kind of between the ears, which can be such a big thing at this time of year. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a great battle, a great series, and it's all set up potentially here for just the exorcism tour between.
I was going to throw that in there.
I tweeted this out like weeks ago when it was looking like, okay, maybe the Blues. And then, of course, you look at who's beaten the Jets in the playoffs. It's been St. Louis. They're playing now. It's been Colorado, who is potential second-round opponent. It's been Vegas twice, potential third-round opponent. And then the final boss scenario would be old friend Paul Maurice, the Florida Panthers, and who can forget his "if I could wish for one more thing." I mean, my goodness. Look, I'm just thinking of this purely from a journalistic perspective. What would be the best storylines?
That would be it.
The Ducks are kind of all potentially set up in a row there. So
not the Anaheim ones. They fired.
No, exactly. Yeah. But we'll take it one game at a time, just like the Jets.
Did they fire Greg Cronin today?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, and Peter Laviolette.
They almost beat the Jets 3 times this year.
I'm a little surprised. I actually thought the Ducks were building something.
I thought he was doing a good job with the Ducks.
They gained 20 points from where they were last
I know. I guess they want another. I mean, maybe they felt he's taken them as far as they can. But anyways, the Ducks are golfing. The Jets are going to play hockey here. And, it should be a great series, but I'll take the Jets in 6.
Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. You'll have complete game coverage, along with his friend Ken Wiebe and our friend Ken Wiebe. Available online on winnipegfreepress.com. And then, of course, in the Dead Tree edition of the Free Press as well, all week long. Mike, thanks for coming by. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much, Mike.
We give him the $5.
We're saving it for Timmy.
Keep the tip. Keep the tip. Mike McIntyre joining us
He's a journalist.
here
He can't be bossed
at Cityplace. This has been a ton of fun. We have more to come on this special pregame edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, Mike McIntyre. We're live at Cityplace in downtown Winnipeg. 1 hour, less than an hour away from puck drop between the Jets and the St. Louis Blues. Don't go anywhere. More to come on this Saturday afternoon.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now, you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. Cityplace is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make Cityplace your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit Cityplace at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in 2 unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
We are back Saturday afternoon, the Illegal Curve pregame show before the Jets and the Blues. Puck drop in about 1 hour's time. We'll be with you until the bottom of the hour. That's about the time that the skate is going to start, the warm-up skate, and then we will adjust our positions, Dave M., heading to the Canada Life Center in the press box. But after the game, remember, our third show of 3 on this Saturday is the Illegal Curve post-game show. Join us after the final whistle back on our YouTube channel. We will be there to break down everything that happens in Game 1 between the Jets and the Blues. So join us after the game. That'll be right around, let's assume, 7:45 or so. Of course, if there's overtime, that can change. But whenever it is, when that final whistle blows, we will be there for the Illegal Curve post-game show.
I'm feeling overtime. I'm going to be honest. I'm feeling overtime in Game 1.
Well, if there's
I'm going on the record. I'm not going to guarantee it.
I'm thinking 3-1.
Okay.
If there's an overtime, again, as a reminder, for any game, come playoff time, get to our social media platforms.
Which you should already be following.
At Illegal Curve on X, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Blue Sky. Get to especially the X and the Blue Sky feeds. For any game that goes into overtime, that will be the start of the Illegal Curve overtime pool. Hashtag ICOT pool. That'll be where you can have an opportunity to win tickets to a great upcoming performance with our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. We always do this come playoff time, so be sure to be following Illegal Curve. Scan the QR code for those of you who are within earshot here at Cityplace. If you say, I want more of those guys, I just discovered them. Well, where have you been? But I just discovered them. Scan the QR code.
You might want to get your head examined.
Yeah, well, that's a separate issue entirely. Scan the QR code and be sure to join us each and every time we go live with the Illegal Curve pregame show, the Illegal Curve postgame show, and of course,
your picture taken
the Illegal Curve hockey show. What's that?
You can get your picture taken over by the escalators.
Yeah, actually, I'm shocked Ezzy isn't over there. I'm pretty sure there's free cotton candy over there, Ezzy.
Really?
Yeah. Look at his eyes.
You know what? I'm not a big. My kids love. Like I'm sure your kids love cotton candy. Like I'm not a big cotton candy guy.
Too sweet.
I hate. No, it's like eating sugary pillow. Like I don't know. I think
it's funny. I was about to say I don't think I've ever eaten it before, but I think I may have tried it once. But
we've
nasty.
Really, clearly discussed all the relatively mainstream foods that you don't eat.
Yeah.
So we're going to add cotton candy to that list apparently as well. I just have to point out that, of course, we were with you with the Illegal Curve hockey show a few hours ago, and I had technical difficulties, which resulted in me, my screen freezing while I was in the middle of doing jazz hands.
It was great.
And the AI generated synopsis of this morning's show is as follows. Quote, viewers are discussing the technical difficulties during the show, the Winnipeg Jets performance, and other random topics.
Well, I think the more important fact is that we know that Joe from Winnipeg switched his handle to Drew's Jazz Hands, but now there's a second Drew's Jazz Hand, and they're fighting in
Kenny's water bottle.
Sorry. I mean, I just saw Kenny's water bottle, but who did that? But the problem is now there's a second one, and they're arguing as to who is the real one and who is an imposter. So there are two different, because look, I think this one's KWB because that's the original one, non-Muppet version. But there's also a Muppet version with Drew. So Drew, there are currently two Drew's Jazz Hands in the chat arguing as to who's the original and who is the fake.
This is big, Drew. What happened on today's show was huge.
It's a game changer, if you will. Yeah. Well, I appreciate the support from anybody who was enjoyed my Jazz Hands.
KWB confirmed that is the one with the picture of you from this morning. Yes. The AI one is yet to be determined who that is.
Okay, well, time will tell.
I miss Kenny's water bottle.
Well, so yesterday I was walking into a local establishment that's attached to here at Cityplace prior to the Nelly concert, and and who's spinning tunes? Everyone's favorite chatter, Isha Boy Bruce, was spinning tunes at
nice.
last night as I was on my way to the Nelly concert.
Yeah, he's a great DJ,
yes.
And obviously a big fan of IC, big fan of Winnipeg Sports Talk, Kenny and Rennie. So shout out to Isha Boy Bruce. His real name's Neil, but we know him as Isha Boy Bruce.
That's
so
right.
Nice to, you were partying up at Nelly
Although
last
I'll be
night.
perfectly honest, he texted me, because I missed him. He said he saw me, enter.
Oh, whoa, Drew, big time someone.
No, but then he came back, and of course I said that. But I think his name is now just Bruce, because when he texted me, he said, "Drew, it's Bruce." So, I mean, I think he's abandoned his real name, and he's now just known as his username in the chat. So that's what's happening when you sign up and you join and you are an active participant in the Illegal Curve chat room on our YouTube channel.
I think you should legally change your name to Isha Boy Drew.
I thought it was going to be Drew's Jazz Hands. My middle name will be Jazz. My new last name will be Hands.
Yeah, that
it's
works
perfect.
Yep.
In any event, the Jets, of course, are hoping that they have soft hands today against the St.
Nice
Louis
segue.
Blues.
Nice
Thank you.
segue there.
Especially because this is going to be, again, we know what the Jets' success looks like. They're smothering when they are playing at their peak. They did it against the St. Louis Blues about 12 days ago, that Monday evening contest where the Blues entered the game on that 12-game winning streak, and they absolutely took former Premier Gary
Shout out to
Philman.
former Premier Gary Dewar.
Premier Philman,
Gary
welcome.
Dewar.
Yes. Sorry, Premier Dewar. That's what I meant.
I'm like, what are you doing?
I got my Gary's confused. Premier Dewar. That's
Gary
yes.
Dewar right
My
there.
apology. I got my Gary's confused.
I'm like, and you're very confident. And I was like, that's definitely not Gary Philman. That's Gary
I
Dewar.
got my Gary's confused.
That's okay.
It's like when I said that Cam Dineen was Kevin Dineen's kid, and then Googled it and realized that Cam Dineen is no relation to Kevin Dineen.
I'm not gonna look. I don't want to drag. I don't
Enjoy the game.
I don't want to drag Drew out through the mud in his political science degree, but he is definitely killing himself internally over that little mistake.
Dying. I have to admit, I'm absolutely dying inside.
You can tell we know each other a long time. We know these things, because I was like, as soon as Drew did that, I was like, oh, he's dying right now.
Is there a way that producer Tim could freeze Drew in real time?
I got to tell you, this has been a lot of fun. But this is only show 2 of 3 this afternoon. We still got the post-game show to come. Who knows what state I'm going to be in at that point in time? It's getting gradually.
Hopefully frozen. Let it go.
That's funny there, as don't sing Frozen right now, although I'm sure that you've heard it on more than one occasion. But I was saying the middle of the ice.
Yes.
That's going to be where the battle is won and lost in today's game. The Jets have been so good at preventing their opponent from getting to that spot where goals so often come from. And the Jets, have executed that all season long. Vast majority of the 82 games that they've played, they have made it so difficult, and that teams feel it when they try and play against the Winnipeg Jets. I know there's a lot of consternation about the third pair of Logan Stanley and Luke Shen, lack of foot speed, things of that nature.
Against St. Louis, I wouldn't really.
Against St. Louis, again, I don't think it's.
I understand against Colorado, a fast team, you'd be a concern. But
right. St. Louis is not that. The St. Louis is, again, the similarities between these two teams, the way they're built is very similar.
It's a battle of the trenches. More so, it's going to be a battle on the boards. Yeah. Right? And what Drew is saying is, don't expect to see Winnipeg, Colorado last year in the first round, like the type of back and forth.
7-5 or
7-6, wasn't it?
No, it's
7-6.
7-6.
Was that what it was?
7-6 or 8-7, one of the two.
I think 7-6.
But again, Drew's talking about when the Jets are the most effective, they play that smothering forechecking style where they're all over the opponent. They get on you. They don't give you any time and space. They move the puck quickly out of their own zone. They transition well, not necessarily scoring off of the rush, but we got to give credit to the second pairing of Philip Broberg and Justin Falk. It's when you get down to Ryan Suter and Nick Leddy, that's when the similar concerns for the Blues, right, guys? Yeah. And that's why, going back to what we were talking about on this morning show, this is a lot closer of a series than I think some people are calling it. Because the Blues, the Blues are coming in with the 19-4-3 record. Obviously, the really hot play after the Four Nations break. But the Jets are league best record since the Four Nations break as well. So you can't really look at that for an edge. It's going to be in the details. It's going to be, Cole Perfetti winning those battles along the boards. It's going to be Nino Niederreiter chipping in a goal here, a goal there. It's going to be Brandon Tanev on the third line contributing offense. Exactly. It's going to be that type of series. I really think whether it goes 5 games, 6 games, 7 games, you're going to have multiple 1-goal games in the series. I'll be shocked if there aren't.
Well, you know what? I went back to 18-19, and I looked to see when St. Louis clinched the playoff spot. Because we all remember 18-19, St. Louis was the worst team in the league, and then they went on that incredible run after New Year's, ended up winning the Stanley Cup. So in 18-19, they clinched their playoff spot on March the 29th. So March 29th, with about 6 games to go in the season still, is when they clinched their playoff spot. I do think it matters that they didn't clinch their playoff spot this year until game 82. That they had that opportunity. I got people doing the jazz hands for me as they're walking by here in Cityplace.
Okay, give that guy the $5.
Yeah, come back. We have $5 for you for that. That's incredible.
That was amazing. Yeah. So in case you didn't hear, he literally, a gentleman was walking by. Oh, we got some loyal IC. But
there you go. More jazz hands coming this way.
But he literally walked by, yelled, "Hey, Drew," and then went like, and then did the jazz hands. So that was pretty
That's
awesome.
what I was trying to tell you. Like, it's big. What happened was big. That was like, this is going to give us months of content here.
Whether or not, the Jets might lose in 5, but we'll have months of jazz hands related content. But what I was saying though is that St. Louis, when they clinched after they went on that incredible run back in 18-19, they clinched the playoff spot with 6 games to go, so they were able to exhale. They were able to get that sort of break and that mental reset.
Yeah.
The Jets, of course, have had that mental reset for a while because they clinched playoffs so early, in mid-November. They clinched they clinched the Central Division really after beating Dallas, almost 8, 9, 10 days ago.
Right.
Everything else, they've had that mental reset. St. Louis hasn't had that. And I think that is going to be a factor, at least to start this series.
Yeah.
That they
is there some fatigue, right? Like that's what
I
you're
think
asking.
the mental fatigue
right
is almost going to be more so than the physical fatigue, because they've had the 3 or 4 days off since they clinched. Was that on Tuesday that they clinched their playoff spot, if I'm not mistaken?
So, yeah.
Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever it was. They've had the few days off the ice, but I think the mental fatigue is something that's going to be difficult for them to that's an advantage for the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, you do wonder in terms of we've often discussed that, right? As like the whether you need to be firing on all cylinders before. And I know, like I said, I think I did it from like 2010 to 2020 back in a few years back, just to look at how teams came into the Stanley Cup playoffs and whether they need to be firing on all cylinders. And I think it was the 2013 Kings. I think they were like 3-7 or 3-6-1. Like there's all sorts of
something the Dallas Stars are hoping is the case again after they lost the last 7 games that they played.
Exactly, and I don't think so. If you look at the numbers for the Dallas Stars, it's not looking good. Without Heiskanen, they're in big trouble, and now Robertson week to week, they're in real big trouble. So
Colorado in 4.
Yeah, that one. Well, I don't think 4, but I think that one's. I think that one's over.
It might be 4 or 5. The way it looks pretty one-sided right now.
But this is an Avs lunch, so let's keep it rolling here with the Jets talking.
There you go.
Seriously,
go Jets, go here at Cityplace.
But look, I mean, again, like I said, that's what
she could have thrown us $5. Just kidding. She
you are on a microphone.
Turned around after I said that.
You are on a microphone.
She can hear me.
Yes, you're on a microphone. Everyone can hear you. So anyway, so there's an opportunity though, again, that I think you're right, Drew. I think the Jets had to stay crisp because they had Dallas chasing them. They didn't get the chance to take their foot off the gas, but it wasn't at the pressure of making the playoffs. St. Louis has had to play near perfect hockey since 4 Nations. We know that when we had Jeremy Rutherford on, and as he's right, 3 weeks ago, what a great appearance when he came on, and he kind of gave us a breakdown of how they restructured. They used the 4 Nations break to really reset the way they forecheck, the way they did so many different things in game that were not evident the first 3 months of the season. And again, like I said, that it's good, it's effective, but the problem is when you run into a team that's just as good in terms of the details of the game, how are you going to adjust? The Blues, quite honestly, and again, it was just 1 game. We're not going to say that it's going to be necessarily representative of how the series will play out, but we saw in that game here in Winnipeg on April 7th, the Blues didn't have an answer. When you're up, when the team is up 2-0 going into the 3rd period, and the Jets control, or I think maybe it wasn't 2-0, but whatever.
I think it was 1-1, was it not?
Was it
then Iafallo scored. Did he score in the 3rd, or did he score late in the 2nd?
Right. No,
whatever it was.
It was like one. Yeah, it was either 1-1 or 2-1. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. But the point I'm making is that when you have that sort of opportunity, and you can't push the envelope against the Winnipeg Jets. From my perspective, again, it's just another sign that this Jets team is very dialed in. And again, regardless of whether I'm not minimizing the loss of Ehlers and Velarde, but you've been playing without them and staying within that style, within that framework. I don't see why they're going to change.
Yeah, I agree. The Jets have been so good with playing with a lead this year. The numbers are incredible when they've been leading after 20 minutes and when they've been leading after 40 minutes. So I do think it's important for the Jets to get off to an early start.
Especially with the crowd.
Get them into it. They're already into it, as we know here in downtown Winnipeg at Cityplace. We can feel the excitement. They're going to be electric, but an early goal will even blow the roof off 100%. The barn even further. But I do think, I want to see how this Jets team responds to adversity, because that's the one thing they haven't been able to do since in the last number of years. They get behind, they lose a game. Remember, the Jets haven't won a playoff game since losing a game, after losing a game in years at this point in time.
Sure.
I mean, you go back to the Vegas series. They win the first one, then they lose 4
and
straight.
If you think about it, they swept the Edmonton Oilers
and then they got
swept to Montreal. So really, you'd have to go to 2019, I guess.
Against St. Louis, probably, when they would have last won a game after losing a game. Because they won. They won a game in St. Louis. They won one of those, of the games in St. Louis. Didn't they have a 2-1 series lead at some point in time, or was it 2-2 and then they came home?
No, because didn't St. Louis win in 5?
No, they won in 6.
Sorry, they won in 6.
They won in 6.
Captain.
Yeah, they won in 6. It was 1-0 for the Jets. Then I think 1-1, and then
yes, you're right. So St. Louis. Okay.
So the St. Louis series was the last time they won a playoff game after losing a playoff game. They need to get that monkey off their back, I believe, as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point that you make when you talk about adversity, because it goes back to what Dave was talking about in terms of in-game, in-season adjustments, right? That's part of the adversity. Like, what are you going to do when you're punched? How are you going to punch back? And we've seen it the last couple of years, guys, and I really don't think that it's going to be a similar run this year. Like, I do think the Jets are going to go on a long playoff run. Is that me being an optimistic co-host of a Winnipeg Jets-centric hockey show? Yes, but I do think this team is built differently. And I look recently to 12 days ago. Again, I'm going to keep referencing that game against the Blues. That was adversity that they were facing. No Nikolai Ehlers, no Gabe Velarde. Who else were they?
Pionk.
No Neil Pionk. Pionk wasn't back yet.
Right.
And what do? They come out with a completely dominant performance against the Blues on home ice, right? So I thought that was really indicative of how the Jets team was going to end off the season. We saw it even against the Ducks when we thought there was going to be a couple of Moose guys, thought maybe Elias Salamonson or maybe Dominic Toninato was going to be in the lineup. And what did they do? They completely dominated the Ducks, and it was only Ville Husso who kept that game close, right? So when we're talking about the playoffs, though, it's a different animal. Just because the Jets were the top team in the regular season doesn't mean that's going to translate over. Obviously, Jets fans are hoping it translates over.
Oh,
hi!
There you go.
More people heckling us.
That's why, and I'm obviously trying to stay positive here. But I think it's to be expected that the Blues are going to come out and they're going to be a very tough test for the Jets. I mean, this is a good Blues team. You don't just go 19-4-3 down the stretch by accident, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we forget that the Blues had a horrible start to the season under Drew Bannister, which obviously cost him his job. But like, this isn't 2019. Like, there is no Vladimir Tarasenko on the Blues, right? There's no Alex Pietrangelo on the Blues. This is a much more score by committee type of team. It's Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrie's team. Let's be honest now. It's not the Tarasenko, Alex Steen, Pietrangelo, Patrick Maroon. I mean, we remember all the big names that were on the Blues this year. Obviously, Jordan Binnington is still there, and Colton Parayko is still there, which is a huge addition. But I think if the Jets play their game, yes, they should be successful against the Blues, hopefully starting with tonight's game 1.
So Scheifele, last time they played on that Monday, 12 days ago, Scheifele had the Robert Thomas line. That was his responsibility.
Ryan O'Reilly, has he?
Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly was back on that team as well.
He might have won the Conn Smythe.
Yeah. And Lowry got the responsibility of shutting down Braden Shen and Jordan Kyrou, and at the time, Dylan Holloway, who, of course, is out of the lineup for the St. Louis Blues. Do you expect it to be the same today, Dave? Do you expect that with last change, Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, Alex Iafallo, they get Jake Neighbors, Robert Thomas, and Pavel Buchnevich?
Well, why would you change a formula that was so effective for you? It makes, you played such a good game, and again, you control the matchups.
Right.
So from that perspective, I mean, that's one of the elements of this chess match that is a hockey game. I mean, we tend to think of it as simplistic and just get on the ice, but again, there is that element of coaching. You don't want to overcoach. But I really think, and it's funny because that's what Scott O'Neill said to us yesterday. He said listen, at some point I got to just stay out of the way of these guys. He still has to obviously effectively coach them, but essentially you want him to basically not reinvent the wheel here. You're game 83. You're looking. Okay, that's fine.
They're heckling us to get to Jordan Bennington. I like it.
But the fact
and Jordan Bennington, I think, is listening right now in the dressing room.
Yeah, I imagine that's what he listens to us for the pregame hype. He listens to he's like, oh, those illegal curve guys, they're doing a pregame show. I got to listen into them.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think like I said, it's just I just don't see them deviating from what has been so successful throughout the course of 82 games. Sorry.
Right. Well, they hope it continues for game number 83, of course, this afternoon in downtown Winnipeg, about 35 minutes away. Puck drop won't, of course, be at 5 o'clock. It's probably going to be closer to the 5:10 or 5:15 mark once they do all the pregame hullabaloo and all that jazz and everything else. That's always how it works. But in any event, the excitement, you can feel it. It's palpable. The people are filtering through here. They're parking themselves at Cityplace. They're listening to us, and then they're making their way through, whether it's to the arena or whether it's to the party, the street party. And that they're going to come back here and they're going to, visit all of the various vendors that are open here at Cityplace in anticipation for game 1 between the Jets and the Blues. And then later on, after the final whistle, the Illegal Curve post-game show will, of course, be with you right around 7:45 if there's no overtime, somewhere around that. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Make sure your notifications are turned on. That way you'll get alerted each and every time we go live with the Illegal Curve post-game show. Again, we're going to be coming back on Monday for game 2. The pregame show is going to be at 4:30 p.m. live here in downtown Winnipeg at Cityplace. The pregame show 4:30 on Monday, ahead of puck drop at 6:30 for game 2 on Monday, Ezzy.
Those guys were just bringing great energy, but shout out to those guys.
They're ready. They're hyped. They're excited.
That's any indication.
Yeah, the place is going to be electric. We all know how excited the atmosphere is going to be in downtown Winnipeg. It's going to be great fun, just like it's been great fun here at Cityplace this afternoon. Our home away from home, and of course your home for Jets coverage in the lead up to all of the home playoff games. We're so thrilled to partner with our friends at Cityplace yet again to bring you these special editions, these special broadcasts of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Later tonight, the Illegal Curve post-game show, Dave is going to be heading his way into the arena. Ezzy and I are going to be making our way to the home studio. So many of you going to be in the arena, be on the street, be here in Cityplace. We're excited to bring you more Jets content all day long, all series long, and all the time, of course, on illegalcurve.com. One last thing where you were just pointing at me for.
No, I was emphasizing the illegalcurve.com. I will say shout out to everyone who's wearing some great outfits. I mean, we've seen some fans who are really into it.
Yeah.
And
are we going to see Salmon Shirt Guy this year, do you think, Dave?
I put that out there as yes. In the last game in the Ducks game.
There's always that one contrarian who has to wear pink or red.
I'll be keeping my eyes peeled in the press
you guys
box.
Remember when I tweeted that out and I said it was Pink Shirt Guy, then people corrected me and said it was Salmon.
Wow.
So I'm not sure if it's pink or salmon.
No,
like Drew said, there's always one or two people that don't get the memo and they don't wear white.
We saw a gentleman here who's married to a girl from Winnipeg, but he's from St. Louis. That's how we started before we got the show started. He's wearing his St. Louis gear. So we'll see some folks, not all. And I think we don't know if they were going to the game or if they were going to go to the street party. But, again, like I said, it's funny because I said that after the Anaheim game. I said, well, you know what? This is the last game we're going to see in the building where it's going to be a lack of a uniform sort of jerseys and that sort of thing in color, I should say. Right. In terms of the lower bowl and the upper bowl. But basically what's interesting is then I said, but except for Pink Shirt Guy. And then someone corrected me on Twitter and said, Salmon Shirt. I'm like, whatever.
In any event, we're going to be wearing shirts on the post-game show.
Yeah, we will not be tarps off.
We will not be tarps off. We will be
Spency might be tarps off.
Yeah, that's a separate
Spency's already tarps off.
In any event, we look forward to you joining us later tonight for the Illegal Curve post-game show. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for this special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, the Illegal Curve pregame show, live at Cityplace. Again, reminder, we're back here Monday afternoon. We look forward to seeing everybody in a few hours' time, whether you're watching at home, whether you're watching in the arena, whether you're watching from the street party, folks. Enjoy game 1 between the Jets and the St. Louis Blues. For producer Tim, for Dave Minuk for Ezra Ginsburg. Big thanks for Mike McIntyre for joining us as well. I am your host, Drew Mindell. Hope everyone's enjoyed it. We'll see you for the post-game show. Enjoy the Jets and the Blues Game 1, everybody. Thanks for watching the Illegal Curve pre-game show.